Yeah, she really does make it possible. Anyway, I want to start off by thanking you for the beautiful gift. Whoever's not here. Um, Good morning. We're learning as a chutzpah for Shlema Pilana Chaya Baserach and for Meir Ben Cyril Peril should have a refuah Shlema. So up and down, like every day. We yesterday we finally heard good news for the first time in a week, and it's like Sunday was again the third time they brought the family together, but they're trying to get him off the vent now. So who knows? We're on Daf Yud Daled Amud Aleph. We're at the bottom of the Amud, at the top of the, but we're just going to remind ourselves. The Mishnah had said that if you shecht an animal on Shabbos or Yom Kippur, the shechita is a kosher shechita. And Rav Huna said b'shem Rav, and it's going to be relevant that it's b'shem Rav, that Rav is the Baal Memra. He says it's, even though it's the shechita is a kosher shechita, you can't eat it on Shabbos. By the way, the question you had asked about eating it raw, if you look on the second line in Rashi, liyuma afilu ba'al lechel basar chai. If he's going to eat the meat raw, you would ask, how could he cook it, right? So, in any case, that was Rav had said, even though the shechita is a good shechita, he can't eat it on that day. So, and the Olam had said, and Rav agreed to this, that this is, the Olam had said, this is Rabbi Yehuda. So you want to suggest it's Rabbi Yehuda of Hachana, where he says that you can, that you're not allowed to eat an avela if the animal died on Shabbos. You can't eat it on Shabbos. And we said it has to. So we had a problem. If that's the case, well, how do you ever eat on Yom Tov? And we wanted to say that since the behema is possibly oimedes lachila and possibly oimedes for breeding, for gidul, we have to say when he shechts it, we say breira, and it's as if from before Shabbos, it had always been intended for shechita, and therefore it's not going to be muksa, it's not going to be hachana. Now the Gemara asks, so 6 lines to the bottom, but lesser Rabbi Yehuda breira. This is all dependent. This explanation is dependent on saying that Rabbi Yehuda holds of breira. Breira is the concept that if you have something which is left in abeyance, a decision, a chalais, a status that is undecided in advance, you can later on make the decision, and then we retroactively go back and treat it as if that decision had been made earlier. But Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of this breira. Minalon, where do we know that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold a breira? Someone purchases wine from a kusi, and a kusi in this context, we're not talking about yayin nesach. Our concern over here is trumas and maisus. Kusim are not like an amaretz. Amaretz is a suffix if they take trumas and maisus. The kusi is certainly not taking trumas and maisus. And he says, so the person has to. He bought this yayin that doesn't have any trumas and maisus taken from it, so he has to take them off. And Rashi says we're talking about a case where it's either it's right before Shabbos, so he doesn't have time to separate it. I mean, he could say it, but he can't actually physically separate it, or he doesn't have a kli in which to separate it. So he's able to say, I want to separate the Trumas and Ma'aser, but he's not able to actually do so. So what does he do? These 2 lugin that I'm going to separate when I get a kli or when after Shabbos, Harei and Truma. The first 2 out of 100, I'm making Truma Gedola. You take 1 out of 50, 2%. Asara Maiserishan. And 10 lugin of Yayin I'm going to make for Maiserishan. That you take 1/10 or 10%. Tisha Maiser Sheni. And then since you only have 90 left, at that point, since you already took off 10 of Maiserishan, you take off another 9 for Maiser Sheni. It's really slightly less than 10 and really slightly less than 9 if you actually calculate the Gemara's, we're rounding it off. So he does just a verbal separation of the Trumas and Maestros, and he can immediately go ahead. He could the Maisa Sheni, he could be paida. Right? Maisa Sheni, you have an option to just take money and say whatever Maisa Sheni is, I'm transferring it onto this money. So that the Maisa Sheni is not relevant anymore. So you really could eat 88%, actually not 88%, you could eat the other 80% or so, or 81%, that's not right, 78% really. You eat the other 78 looking right now because he's the mice. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's right, 88%. That was right because he was mechel, he was part of the mice sheni, so that goes back into the pot. The other 12%, he's going to have to separate later. Diver May, that's Ramesh. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Oisrin. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon say it's aser. Why is that? Because you haven't yet separated it, and they hold when you're going to go separate it later, you can't. Right now, we don't know which actual parish you're going to separate. So we don't say that since you're going to separate it later, we're going to say Brera. I'm going to go back and say as if it was separated originally. So this is the Chayr says, is this where you're going to get the rule of that Rabbi Yehuda holds Ein Brera? That's the reason why he doesn't hold of it. I want to know, Hasam Ketani Taina. The Bryce actually continued and gave a different reason why you cannot start eating the tfua or the yayin, not because of Ein Brera. Amulay the Rameir, they said back to Rameir, the Rameir had said it was mutter. They said back to Rameir that Rabbi Yehuda was the cholkim on Rameir, the people who said it's aser. They said the reason why it's aser is because not because you can't say Ein Brera, because maybe the barrel with the wine will split and it will drain into the ground, and it'll turn out you never had the opportunity to separate the Trumas and Maisros. The Trumas and Maisros are now in the ground. You can't physically separate them. Everyone knows you have to eventually physically separate them, but you can't do it even if he holds yesh brera. And then when you separate it, it will retroactively be as if you did it prior to you eating it. But the Chum don't allow you to do so to eat it now because there's a possibility you will never get the chance. Whatever. Shema Yivakanoid is just one example of maybe the person will lose it. Maybe he'll forget about it. So we don't let you start eating something where you still have something hanging over you that you have to take care of it because maybe it might not come to fruition. And you'll end up having eaten tevel, which didn't have its trumas and maises separate.
Because it's an oinus.
But even if it will be an oinus, we don't let you, because it'll be an oinus, so we don't let you put yourself in this situation where an oinus will have made it that you ate tevel.
So when you separate it, you put the wine in a separate barrel. That barrel.
That doesn't make a difference. That doesn't change the status of what once you separate it from the rest of it. So you lost your truma. You're really supposed to give it to the kohen, whichever one we're talking about, the Levi or the kohen. So you didn't get the chance. It got lost. Okay, that happens. But you're not. You didn't eat. It doesn't retroactively make it lose its status as non-teva. But if you have to physically separate it, at some point you have to physically separate it in order for this truma to be chal, for it to take effect. And if it breaks, you never had the chance to make your separation go into effect. So it turns out what you ate was illegal. You weren't allowed to eat it. That's what we don't like. Amalahan l'kashiyivka. Rameir answers back to them, I'm not concerned about that. If it breaks, it breaks, then it will be an inus. I don't have to, I don't agree with the, I'm not chayshish for that. So that is not a raya. We've given a different reason why Rabbi Yehuda over there says by Trumas and Maisus that it's not going to be chal, that the Trumas and Maisus, it's not necessarily because he holds Ein Brera. So we're still left. Where do you get this from? That Yehuda doesn't hold up Brera. Amel element the Tani Ayer, Yehuda Aimer. Ein adam masn al shnei dvarim ke'echad. So this is talking about the din of tchumen. A person is allowed to designate, right? You're only allowed to travel 2,000 amas from the place where you are on Shabbos. The place for us is a whole city, so it will take us a long time to get outside of New York to worry about tchumen. It's pretty much it'll be many miles till you get outside of New York City before you start counting the tchum. But as you know, if you're in the mountains or you're in some rural area, but there's not much of a city, you only go 2,000 hours. The Chachamim were misakin a slight workaround, a partial workaround, that you can, if you're in a certain place, you could say, I want the place where I'm going to put like a little bit of food someplace, make an Erev Tchumen, and that's going to be my central location for this Shabbos. So let's say, instead of, if I'm in the middle at point A, and point B is 2,000 amas in one direction, and point C is 2,000 amas in the other direction, and I want to get to point D, that's another 2,000 amas from point C, I can designate point C as my new central location. I won't be able to go anymore to point B, which is in the opposite direction, but I'll be able to go all the way to point D by making A, C, D, that the C will be my central, and then A will be 2,000 in one direction, and D will be in the other. Probably not a good idea to use those letters. Probably made it more confusing rather than less. But yeah, so that is the din of tchumen. So this person eina de masnal shedvarim ke'echad. A person can't say, let's say, how should we do this? We'll use states, right? So you have New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. The person is imagine they were cities that were 2,000 amas away from each other. So a person, let's say he's in New Jersey, and he can't say, I'm not sure if I'm going to want to go 2,000 amas in the direction of New York or 2,000 amas in the direction of Pennsylvania, so I'll make two eruv tchumen, one toward New York and one toward Pennsylvania. You can't do that, because what you're doing is designating where your center location is, where you're making your makom shvisa, where you're designating as your Shabbos location. So you can't do two of them. You have to pick one. Ella and Baal Chacham leMizrach. So this person, he knew there was going to be somebody going to give a shiur, but he didn't know which direction the person was going to come from. So he can make a t'nai. He could say, it depends on where the chacham, where he goes to. If he's going to the east, he's going to New York, eruv leMizrach, leMa'ariv eruv leMa'ariv. But if he's going to Ma'ariv, then I want it to be leMa'ariv. He says before Shabbos, I'm making a t'nai that it should be one of these two things, and it will depend on where the chacham goes. Be'ilu lekan loy. But let's say there are two chachamim going, and he says, I want to reserve to go to either one, and then on Shabbos, one's going to go to the east and one's going to go to the west, but I don't know which one is going to go to which, and then on Shabbos I want to decide which way I want to go based on who I want to go to. That you can't do. You have to say, I'm going to whichever way the single chacham goes, but I can't reserve for myself the option to choose from two chacham. Why is that you can't do both ways? The aim breira. Because you can't, on Shabbos, say, I want to now choose, I'm going to the east because I want to go to that shiur. That's what I feel like doing today. The same breira. You can't then retroactively have selected which way your Erev Tchumen is. What does it make a difference if it's only a Chacham? You're also being hovrar by depending on where the Chacham goes to. Rav Yochanan answered, so therefore the reason must be, both cases it's aser alt breira, but we're talking about if the case of a single chacham, we're talking about where the chacham had come before Shabbos. So it was just that we didn't know. It was a chesaron of Yediyah. We didn't know where he had come. He says, I want my Erev Tchumen before Shabbos. He says, wherever the chacham is. So he's not aware yet, but he'll find out later. So that's not breira that he's deciding later. It was not evident to him. He didn't know the facts, but it was dependent on the facts as they were at the time. But when by kan lekan, there's no such thing kvar b'chacham. The chacham, if the chacham was in both places, he's still leaving it to be decided later. But in any case, you see, Rabbi Yehuda is saying it doesn't work. That he's saying because of ein breira. So l'chayru, we can't say that the explanation is like we said because of achana, because like we said, achana is dependent on breira. So back to our original question. This is all a side quest from our original explanation. We had asked the question on the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said, if you shecht on Shabbos, the shechita is kshera, and Rav had said about that you can't use it on that day. So we wanted to say it's because of Rabbi Yehuda of achana. We said that can't work because that only works if Rabbi Yehuda holds up breira. Elam Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says a different explanation of why Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says you can't use this this animal that was shechted on Shabbos on that same day. Yehuda the Kalim he. Yehuda by the din of Kalim. It's not. Kol Kalim hanitin b'Shabbos. Any kli that is mutter to use on Shabbos, meaning it's not a kli like a car that you're not allowed to use on Shabbos. It only could be used by Isser. A regular kli that you're allowed to use on Shabbos. Shivrei and nitlin. If it breaks, you could use the pieces vavad sheyu oisin me'ein malacha, as long as they have some use still. Shivrei areva lichzus behem piachavis, a broken large kli to cover over a barrel. Shivrei schukas lichzus behem piapach, pieces of glass that you could use to cover over a flask. So these are things where the use is not the same use. It's not being used to contain something like it originally had. It was used to hold something in it. It's used as a cover, but that's as long as it has some use. It could be used as a kli. That's still not us. The Yehuda says no. It's more restrictive than that. If it breaks, in order for you to use the pieces, it still has to be able to do the original use that it had been for. Shiva areva lotzuk l'soichan mikveh, the pieces of a pot or a kli to put inside of it, to use it to hold a mikveh. I think it's like a soup, tafshel of a thick soup, or a dough. Shivrei schuchas lotzuk l'soichan shemen, or pieces of glass to put oil in them. Me'ein melachtanin, me'ein melachachar loy. But you see, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the kli that was at the beginning of Shabbos was prepared for one use. It has to, if it breaks, if it changes, it has to still be able to do that use in order for it not to be muksa, for us not to say that at the time that Shabbos started, it wasn't prepared for this type of use. Since it's not prepared for this other malacha, like you said, to cover over a kli, Yehuda would say it's also. This animal, it was not prepared on Erev Shabbos to be eaten. It needed to be shechted. Right now, it could be used for work. It could be used for breeding. It has to be able to be used for the same use. And this is not after you shechted. It's being used for a different use. You weren't prepared to eat it on Shabbos. Amalei Abaya midami pasa meikara kli v'hashta shevakli v'havale noilud v'asa. Abaya says no, that's not a good dimin. That which Rabbi Yehuda says over there, that's not going to be a mutter to use the kli that broke, because it's a whole different thing. First it was a kli, and now it's a piece of a kli. So it's a newly created thing on Shabbos, and that's why it's us. It says no. This was always something that was able to be eaten. It could be other things could be done with it, but it's not a new creation. It just has a new status because of its because you shechted it, but it's not a whole different thing. And if it's something that's, when you have a piece of something that's eaten, that's not considered a whole different noilid, a newly born entity. Why? It's a piece of a food that's separated from it. And we know that as a general rule, Yehuda holds Lagabi Shabbos, something that separates from a eichel, from a food, is not considered a new creation. It's not considered noilid. Where do we know that from? The Tnan. You can't squeeze out Paris to take from them their liquid. You can't squeeze it to get a let's say, like we'll see grape juice. You take a grape. Now we all know that because of dash, but now the Gemara is going because of noilid, because you're creating. So you're not allowed to squeeze it to get out the mashkin. So that really is also l'kuli alma because of dash. Tanakama says even if it comes out on its own, where we don't allow it, then there's no isser of dash, but we're geyser because maybe you'll come to squeeze it out on your own. Yehuda Aimer, im la'oichlon hayotzim hen mutter. If this was something that was intended to eat, so there's no chashash. We don't have to be geyser. We don't have to make a gzeira that maybe he'll come to squeeze it out. So what's the issue? You're saying noilid. This is ochla de'efresu. So even if the juice comes out of it on its own, as long as it was intended to be eaten, it's mutter because it's not a noilid. But if it's lamashkin, it's a man also. But if it's intended for drinking, so then we still have the chashash that maybe it'll come to squeeze it out. So therefore, it's going to be awesome. So we see the only issue, even according to Rabbi Yehuda over here, is only whether he's going to come to squeeze it on Shabbos and be over on Dash. But as far as the fact that this is something newly created, it oozed out of the liquid, as long as we don't have that chash, because it was an eichel, we say it's mutter. What about noilid? Why is it a newly created thing? You say no. That's because it's ochla defris, and ochla defris is not a noilid. So therefore, we're back to you can't prove anything from this din of kalim, because our case is different. It's a ochla defris, even though Rabbi Yehuda will say kalim it's going to be noilid. Over here by shchita, it wouldn't be noilid; it would be ochla defris. Now the Gemara suggests another possible explanation of Yehuda. Lav itmar Allah. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Ma'idai Rabbi Yehuda lechachamim b'salei zeisem va'anavim. Rabbi Yehuda is ma'idai the chachamim by a basket of olives and a basket of grapes. Olives and grapes are things that are primarily, at least back in those days, were used for making wine and oil. They were rarely eaten as is. So he says in that, even Rabbi Yehuda's Maida, even if the person intended to eat them, since they're primarily not used for eating, that's going to override his preferences. Alma, kami, daita. You see, since it's intended to be schita, that it's daita, he has in mind to squeeze them. Since this is intended for shchita, he has it in mind, and that's what we say that it's, and therefore we're geyser that he's gonna. We don't let him do it because he'll come to do it on Shabbos. So maybe over here that's also the problem that we're concerned that since a person intends to shecht this, if we allow him to eat it after it's shechted, he'll come to shecht on Shabbos. So Kumar Midu time el Rav. Gemara says, but this whole enterprise that we're trying to understand how we know that this is like Rabbi Yehuda. That Rabbi Yehuda is the man who says you can't eat an animal that was shechted on Shabbos. That was all because Rav was the one who said it. Amar Rav but Rav disagrees and he says Rabbi Yehuda is chalik on salei zeisem v'anavim. And he says it's also. So he says it's mutter. So if he had in mind to eat it, so that's obviously not going to be the source, because Rabbi Yehuda Rav himself doesn't hold that Rabbi Yehuda will concede that it's usher in that case. El Amr Rav Sheshes, Breder Rav Idi. Rav Sheshes Breder Idi gives another explanation of why Rabbi Yehuda, how Rabbi Yehuda is the man Amr who says if you shecht an animal on Shabbos, you can't use it that Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda the Nerisi. So Rabbi Yehuda legabe yaner. The tanya. A ner is not a candle. A ner is the cup that they used to put the oil. So the cup that they would use a glass cup or an earthenware cup to put oil, and it would become dirty and not able to be used for other or other things. The Tanya, metaltal ner chodosh, you're allowed to use a ner chodosh, a brand new ner, a brand new cup, because since it hasn't been used, it hasn't gotten dirty. So you can use it as a drinking cup. Avallah yashin, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use an old one because it becomes moss, it becomes disgusting. So we want to say maybe the same thing over here. Rashi says avallah yashin. The muktzei machmas, the second line from the bottom. Muktzei machmas is shadas katzavim v'hach behemanami. This behem also. Since at the onset of Shabbos, it wasn't able to be used because it's aser. It's at this point it's not allowed to be eaten. So a person is makatz himself. He's not intending to use it. It's aser. So maybe Rabbi Yehuda limits it only to something that's mos. That's a sufficient reason to make it aser for the whole Shabbos. Muksa machmas issa mishamelei. Does he say even when it becomes muksa because of an isser? Yeah, he does say it by isser. It's not Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Kol neirish shel matzis. If the nair is not made out of glass or of ceramic, but it's made out of metal, so metal kli is easy to wash off. Metaltalin, you're allowed to use them on Shabbos, unless it was already lit before Shabbos. Then you have a different problem. The matches, it's not going to become mos, but if it's lit when Shabbos starts, then at the beginning of Shabbos you can't use it because it's also to put out an air, so you can't use it. So you see that because it's aser, that's a reason to aser it for the whole Shabbos. So why don't we say by shchita? Maybe that's what he means. Shchita is also aser machmas eser. So no, you still can't compare. V'dil mashani hasam duhu dochile biyadayim. By the ner, when he lights it, he's physically, proactively making it aser. So maybe that type of iser, Rabbi Yehuda says it's going to be aser on Shabbos. But a behema, which just in its normal status is that it's ever minachai until you shecht it, but he didn't do anything to make it aser. Maybe that Rabbi Yehuda would not say it's aser on Shabbos. Elam Ravashi, Rabbi Yehuda de mevashelhi. Finally, something that will make sense to us. This is, I assume, what occurred to most of us. We all know if you cook something on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos. It's a gzeira takanos chachamim. This is Rabbi Yehuda de mevashel. That's not hamvashel b'Shabbos. If someone cooks on Shabbos, there's a lot of details of this. B'shoigig, if he does it at b'shoigig, yachol, he could eat from it. The mezid yachol. The mezid he can't eat from it. Divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir says it's only b'mezid that you can't eat from what you cooked on Shabbos. B'shoigig, you can go right away and eat it. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, b'shoigig yochel l'matzah Shabbos. Yehuda says the gzeira of eating something that you cooked on Shabbos, you shouldn't come to eat. She shouldn't be nana from your malach, from your aveira. So if you wait till after Shabbos, then you haven't been nana, because you could have anyway waited and done it at l'matzah Shabbos. The mezid lo yochel lo lamas. The mezid, we say you can't eat it at all, because if you not cooked it on Shabbos, it wouldn't have been available to you. It wouldn't have been cooked. So if you eat it even after Shabbos, it's going to be nana from Shabbos. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda had said that he himself can't eat it forever, but other people can eat it Motzei Shabbos. Yochanan Sadler says Shabbos. He says you do it b'shoigig, then it could eat like Rabbi Yehuda said, the Motzei Shabbos. La'acherim, but only la'acherim. He himself, it's going to be mutter aser because he's being nana ultimately from what he did on Shabbos, so he can never be nana from. La'acherim v'loy loy. B'mezid lo yochel lamas loy loy v'loy la'acherim. B'mezid, if he did it b'mezid, it can never be eaten by anyone. That obviously there's no gzeira on other people eating it; they're not benefiting. But the point is that's a pasuk we're going to see that where he gets this from, that you can't eat from. So we're saying this is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says b'shoigig yochel motzei Shabbos. So our Mishnah is talking about b'shoigig, and that's why we say you can't eat it on that day because of this gzeira. that we don't want people to eat when they did an Aveira. Correct the Gemara of a Nukma Memezid Remeir. Right? Remeir, it said, Vasha b'Shabbos Shogeg Yochel Memezid Lo Yochel. Remeir. Remeir says Memezid you can't eat on Shabbos also. Someone like Sakadai. Tani Dum Yudiyam Kippurim. In our Mishnah we had said someone shechts on Shabbos or Yom Kippur. So we're comparing Shabbos Yom Kippur. Ma Yom Kippurim Loishna b'Shogeg Loishna b'Mezid Lo Yochel. Just like Yom Kippur, certainly you can't eat on that day because you're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. So Shabbos is also when it says it's mutter, but it means you can't eat it. It means also you can't eat the whole day. Can you really say we're going in Rabbi Yehuda and B'shoigig? The Mishnah had said that the person who shechts on Shabbos, even though he's chayiv misa, it's still the shechita is kosher. The chayiv benafshe is only if someone does it b'mezid. How can you say it's talking about b'shogig? Talking about hachikam ava pidu mezid chayiv benafshe who hacha b'divshogig shchitasik shera. Even though had he done it b'mezid, it would be chayiv benafshe. When he does it b'shogig over here, it's his shechita is shera, but he can't eat it that day. Practically more of a nukun kurb yochanan sandler. Why don't we say like the last shita? The Amar loishna b'shogig loishna b'mezid lo yachol. So even b'shogig. By him, it could even be talking about b'shogig, and we're saying he can't eat it. So Rabbi Yochanan Sandler kamaflik b'motzei Shabbos lachayim v'loy loy. Rabbi Yochanan Sandler says it depends who we're talking about. B'shogig, other people can eat it, but not him. Even b'motzei Shabbos, he can't eat it, right? And Ravid said you can't eat it that day. It's mashma after that day you could. Haydan shkitasik sherik tani loishna loy. Our Mishnah was not mechalik between whether it was him or someone else. Okay, we're going to stop over here and get back to Vashal B'Shabbos tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Lucy, you see why I was tempted to learn separately last night?
Yes.